The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar today, Making SAP Agile to Accelerate Transformation. So what we'll be covering today are a range of areas. So firstly, I'll provide an introduction and a brief overview, which is, I guess, what I'm doing now. So we'll speak briefly about the challenges facing SAP IT teams as they go through transformations and things in that ilk today. We'll talk a little bit about SAP IT teams going agile, what it means for them, what our observations have been, then on to some of the challenges in going through that process. We're going to then talk a little about the immediate impact that automation can make. There are questions available, so if you'd like to ask some questions, feel free to do that. The way you ask those questions is on the right-hand side, you'll see a little questions poll there. Just go and ask the questions. I'll be able to see those questions and answer them either as we're going through or at the end when we get there as well. So there'll be a couple of poll questions along the way for you to get involved in, and of course then we'll wrap and finish it up. So it'll probably take about 35 minutes or so, maybe a little longer. So if you're able to stay for the whole thing, that would be great. If not, we can talk to you a little bit later on as well. So let's get underway. We've got a little bit to cover today. So firstly, my name is Rick Porter. I'm the Vice President of Business Development for the Rev-Trac software business here. I've been in this area now for over 15 years, and so I've spoken with many hundreds of different SAP IT teams from very different industries, different size of places and so on. And so we seem to come across a lot more things than what a single SAP IT team does. And so we generally have quite a good overview of what we see going on around us and some of the challenges and opportunities facing SAP IT teams, particularly today as things seem to be changing quite rapidly for the way IT teams need to operate and work. A little about the company. Revelation Software Concepts has been involved in developing software to simplify SAP change control for many years now, continually developing and improving the software as it needs to morph and change to meet growing and changing requirements of customers. Our focus is 100% on SAP and on SAP change control. And as many of you know, we are the developers of Rev-Trac, Rev-Trac Platinum and Rev-Trac Insights. And I'll speak a little about that software a little later on in today's webinar too. So to the body of the discussion today. So we've noticed that SAP IT teams are certainly having some challenges at the moment. So one of the main ones we find is actually keeping up with the business request pipeline. The volume of change coming down the pipe seems to be increasing, and the speed at which it needs to be delivered is also increasing, and it's becoming difficult to create both a high volume, high velocity delivery pipeline and maintain quality. And this is causing some nervousness among SAP IT teams and their management as well. One of the problems too is that they're having to manage and deal with dated and siloed systems and processes. It's not unusual to find an SAP IT team working with some ITIL practices and an ITIL software someplace, working with some kind of project management software, perhaps Microsoft Project or Sharewell or something similar to that, then working with spreadsheets, having many face-to-face meetings, and still sending workflows out by manual email and so on. And so this actually hampers the goal of being able to deliver the high volume change at high quality. Maintaining process consistency then becomes an issue too, because teams come and go, they change. Managers come and go and they change. Not everybody understands the processes, and so ensuring that each and every change follows the required process can also be very difficult as well. And then this makes it difficult to maintain and meet project deadlines. We're finding that the older idea of meeting a project deadline being the most important thing is that a project runs for 3, 6, 12 months and then bang, it needs to be delivered on time. Quality suffers because we need to deliver on time. Today we're learning that companies are not generally doing the 6 to 12 month projects anyway, because by the time that project is delivered, life has moved on and that particular enhancement is already behind the times. And so companies are looking at delivering significantly smaller, more rapid fire projects. Senior IT executives have their own challenges too. Of course, we all know that one of the senior IT executives' objectives at the moment is to achieve a business's transformation objectives. It's important for companies to keep up, and so accelerating those objectives is one of their challenges. They too are having to understand how to achieve this with fractured and dated systems as well, but just at a different level than the SAP IT team. Guaranteeing regulatory compliance is one of those things that can keep a senior IT executive up at night. And of course, delivering on DevOps objectives also is a challenge that senior IT executives are facing. And so we find that if you hear some of the pressures that the CIO is under, we find that CIOs are charged with keeping things moving, keeping things running, but having to innovate at the same time. They're having to innovate with less money and often with fewer people, and they still need to deliver more. And so there's a significant pressure on CIOs, on senior IT executives, and also on the SAP IT teams to change and begin to do the things as well. So what does this all mean then for the SAP IT team? Well, it certainly means that we need to begin to change the way we operate from silos into more of a DevOps type of scenario where there's more collaboration, where there's more working together, where there's less demarcation around tasks and jobs as well. We need to begin to change the way we develop and deliver, moving away from waterfall type delivery methodologies to more agile type methodologies. And the way to do this is to begin to look at ways we can change the way we're doing things manually to automating more of these things. So to achieve the CIO objective, which is to do more with less, one of the ways to do that, of course, is through automation. Maintaining consistent or existing manual systems and processes is not going to result in the type of speed of delivery that's going to be required. So this means then that SAP support teams also need to move to include things like innovation and other things other than support in the things that they tend to do as well. But why is all this really important? Well, the reason this is all important is because CIOs and IT and operations leaders know that if we can deliver on our DevOps and Agile type of methodologies and plans, that we can deliver things faster. We can create faster cycle times, we can increase the velocity of moving change into production, and we can realize or help the business realize value from IT much quicker. And so it's really important then that IT teams are moving down this road, but hopefully some of the background gives some of the ideas to why moving towards an Agile/DevOps type environment is going to become very important to SAP IT teams. There is a difference between Agile and DevOps. Sometimes we find that it gets a little bit confusing between the two, and often we find that our customers have their own ideas about what each of these are as well. And so not all do they mean the same things for all people. But basically, Agile is really a development methodology that enables working software to make its way over to the business side of the fence very quickly, so that they can begin to work with it, test it, and either move it into production at will or send it back for further development. Whereas DevOps is a set of tools and practices that ensure that the software is safely delivered. Because although we're moving more software into production more often, it doesn't mean we're allowed to break production. It's still got to be quality software as well. So over to you for a moment. I have a poll question here, so I'll just launch that question for you. And the question is, to what extent is your organisation working with Agile and DevOps? Is it a significant amount, somewhat, you're looking into it, or actually not at all? So feel free, go and put your information into there. I'll give you a few more minutes to begin to add your information into that as well. So need a few more responses if that's okay, just to get a bit of a better view over there. So looks like everyone has their thinking caps on, so I'll leave it open for just a second, and then I'll close it, and then we'll publish that. Okay, I'll close the poll now, and now I shall share it. So here we can see that obviously we're talking to the right audience. Almost half are heading down that road in somewhat of a significant manner. Some are not there at all yet. Others are looking into it. So it's about 35% are looking into it or not there yet, and about 20% somewhat. So around 50% are still at the early part of your journey towards Agile and DevOps. So that's not surprising, because that's what we're tending to see out in the marketplace as well. Okay, so moving on. What we're finding is that there are different types of SAP IT teams in different doing different things or involved in different industries. And we find that those that are more interfacing with customers seem to be the first to act when it comes to going Agile. So it'll be very interesting to see what industries the 50% that are doing a significant effort around Agile and DevOps are actually in. Are you in B2C areas, or are you in B2B areas? So things like banks, utilities and retail companies are those that we see have made the greatest strides towards being Agile in their SAP IT team and SAP development areas as well. So what are some of the challenges then that SAP IT teams face while they're going Agile? And there are many, so we're not going to get to cover all of these today, and I'm certain that you'll think of a half a dozen that I haven't even come close to today as well. But essentially we find that SAP IT teams are generally very large. They can be small teams, but they can be huge teams. We have spoken with certain SAP using customers, and they've got their IT teams in the thousands. So, 1.5 to 2,000 people, developers, basis people, functional people, and so on. So it can be very large teams, and normally working on operational environments. So it's not a build, crash, and burn. These are productive systems and productive areas. We find too that, of course, there's a conflict of the past versus the future. Agile promotes rapid change, but it's usually the direct opposite to governance requirements for core systems, which traditionally limits change or certainly slows it down, that's for sure. We find that experimental functionality being introduced into production is somewhat of a no-no. And so finding ways to work in an agile manner without upsetting the traditional way of doing things can be very interesting as well. So the reason we look at this is because if we take Gartner's PACE layered model and bimodal development and so on, we find at the bottom we have our systems of record. Now this is typically where the SAP IT team has worked. This system of record is critical to the running of the business. Everything happens in and out of here, and this needs to be governed very, very well, and it cannot be broken because it needs to operate all the time. As we move higher up, we find that there are systems of innovation and systems of differentiation which have a little less of the need to govern, but often have a higher need to change. And we're finding that it's just not quite, it's not really acceptable to not change the system of record. So change does happen inside the SAP IT team. And of course, we see SAP now moving to things like S4HANA and putting that up into the cloud to hopefully produce an environment that requires less change around it. And then building around that, of course, other systems of innovation, other cloud-based systems like SuccessFactors, Ariba, and so on, to begin to help companies work with the two ways of managing change. So in the Bimodal IT, we have the mode 1, the mode 2 from there before. So here's the reason why they're actually different. So, in the core systems, things need to be reliable. The approach used to be all waterfall, but now it needs to be a little more agile and iterative. We need to have a defined scope. We need to know what we're doing before we start in many cases, and we need to deliver things that work well. So it seems to be more IT-centric, whereas in the more agile workspace, it's a little more business-centric. It's a little closer to the customer. And of course, the delivery cycles are different as well. So if we look at the delivery methods in the mode 1, things like waterfall and incremental waterfall, where we design the specification, we get that approved, we create a huge scope of work, then we begin to develop like crazy to actually create that scope of work and fulfill it, and then go ahead and deliver that into the production system so it all works for everybody, is the traditional approach of doing things. And so we find that we need to begin to move a little more towards the way that the mode 2 is being operated as well, where it's far more iterative and it's really agile. So really moving away from traditional development methods to innovative methods as well. And so the 50% of you that are working significantly in this particular area would no doubt know exactly what we're talking about here as well. We often get asked questions about how does Agile work and how do Agile teams work as well. And so it's interesting. Companies work it in different ways, but basically we see that the development team is actually designed to develop. And so they'll build, they'll test, and then they'll deploy into QA, and then it's over to the business, where they will often do their testing or their user acceptance testing. They'll then either hand that back to development to perhaps iterate or make a change or two to bring it up to what they had in mind, or then they will deploy it into production when they're ready for it as well. So the development team does the developing, and the business team does the deploying. Now, when we talk about the development team and how they're organized, we find that companies organize their agile teams in different ways. Some of them are organized around functional groups. So this might involve development and teams across applications. So these might be across SAP applications, or they might be across other applications that are SAP and non-SAP applications. And so the team is made up of developers from different disciplines. Others, they design their teams around particular modules inside SAP. So you might have a finance team, you might have a GRC team, you might have a CRM team, and so on, and they work that way. So these teams work together on behalf of the business, developing and delivering business requests, move it over the fence, and then the business will deploy it into production when they're ready to use that particular software. And so the development teams and the business teams actually deploy differently, and they manage by different things. So you tend to find that the development team would manage their developments by sprint. These are relatively short. At Revelation, we work on 2-week sprints. So we develop over 2 weeks. Then it goes into the UAT system, where we take a look at that, work with that, make sure it's how we wanted it to be. If necessary, it iterates back to development, where they'll make those changes and move them there in that UAT team. And then as a business, we will then package those changes up into our releases. Typically, we would produce a major release every 6 months. Sometimes we'll move things out a little quicker than that. So then we as the business can decide when we're going to deploy that and when our customers are going to use it as well. So hopefully you can see here there's two different ways of managing change that needs to be managed by the same organisation at the same time. This can be quite a challenge because technically SAP transport management and managing change is actually quite tricky. So we need to deal with things in an agile environment like parallel development, where managing, we might have several different teams. They may be working in the same development system, they may not. Often when we're working with agile teams, I think the utopia really is to spin up a development system for each team. It's a little expensive to do that at the moment, but that's beginning to change, and there are tools and systems being developed to enable that to occur rapidly and inexpensively, so it's not too far off. But once it moves into QA, for example, we need to manage that parallel development. There certainly was once upon a time where our software was designed to prevent parallel development from occurring, because that was the big no-no. Everything goes in production in order that it had been developed, and there's never been a problem. But when we're moving to things like agile development, we're not able to guarantee that each object that's worked on in the development system is going to go to the QA or the production system in order. So managing that parallel development can be very tricky indeed. We also then have cross-sprint and cross-release dependencies. So if we're managing something by sprint, it's a 2-week sprint, we might need to put some things into it, take some things out of it, but there may be some dependencies that are occurring within that sprint. And if we would like to remove it from one sprint to another, there's a chance that we might break a dependency that's really important. Perhaps more likely to occur, though, on the business side, where we are managing the change by release. The business might want to move a certain amount of functionality into their production system on day 55, for example, and realize that perhaps this piece of functionality doesn't quite meet the needs, so they want to take it out. So understanding the dependencies in that also can be very tricky. When developers are working on different objects all the time, ensuring that your particular program is referencing the right version of an object also can be difficult to understand, because this type of visibility normally doesn't exist. So we're actually referencing object version 1.2 when object version 1.3 is already on its way to production. So that can become a problem and also can be very tricky to manage. Abandoned development, if this isn't managed well, can actually build up. They can build up both in the development system, which makes unit testing a little difficult, or they can build up in the QA system. Fortunately, there are tools being developed to help those cleanups and identify those abandoned developments, but they can tend to build up and they can tend to skew results and so on too. So that's another challenging area that Agile seems to present. It's not necessarily an Agile only problem. There seems to be a build-up in these systems that occurs over time naturally. And so systems and tools to identify those and to clean those up are also very important too. Business has no visibility technically. So when they're beginning to move their changes into production, if things are getting out of sequence, they don't have that visibility. They don't understand the technical connections between what is going in. And so that can be a problem as well. Of course, we're always battling with the core system governance and control. Balancing up speed and governance can be quite difficult as well. So I have another poll question for you now. So this one is a little around, more around what of these challenges are you actually facing in your place? So I'll give you some time to go through and take a look at those. So check all those that apply. It might only be one of these that's yours, or I actually didn't put in none of the above, so you don't get the option to put in none of the above. So I'll just allow you to begin to put in what your problems actually are. So I need a little bit of dancing music really to provide a bit of entertainment in the background here. So I see the results are coming in there. So about half have put some results in. I'll give a few more minutes to let a few others put some results in as well. Then I can publish and we can have a look at those as well. Okay, I'll go ahead and close that off now, and then I shall publish that so you can see what you've all put into there as well. So interestingly, it seems to be that most of you are experiencing some problems in most of these areas. Of course, the cross-sprint and cross-dependency seems to be the one that's the most challenging, but managing parallel development is coming up the back there as well. So, as I mentioned, there's a number of other technical challenges in here too that I've not mentioned today that no doubt you are experiencing as well. So, thank you for your participation. I'll put that away now, and we shall move on. So how do we actually go about solving this? I mean, it's all very well to point out problems, but you actually want to know how to fix those as well. So we actually said that automation can make an immediate impact on achieving transformation goals. So how is that the case? Well, what we find is companies are undergoing significant digital transformation reforms, yet at the back end, where it all begins, they're running with very dated manual processes. So our challenge has been, why don't you consider digitally transforming your back end? That is, digitally transforming the way you manage SAP change. So what does this mean? Well, this begins to then transform the dated processes that are going to be speed limiters to helping your business achieve its goals. We are finding that the SAP IT team is under significant and increasing pressure to speed things up. But you can't speed things up if you're not going to change the way that they're actually done. So things like automation then becomes really important. We'll discuss that a little. Talking about unifying systems and processes, creating ways to enable high velocity delivery, and being able to create the type of visibility that one needs across the business units and across the teams to be able to achieve those type of things that we're actually looking for. And the interesting question I like to ask is, are we getting close to being able to do this on average? Well, the answer is actually no. In May this year, Gartner did some research around IT and operations automation, and they discovered that only 1% actually has the majority of their IT processes automated and integrated. So it would seem to me then, now this is across the board. Now, given that SAP IT teams tend to be a little behind when it comes to taking on new methodologies and new processes, it's probably pretty accurate for them as well. So even if you look at those that are frequently, 12% of IT teams actually working with automated processes. And so there is a long way to go yet. And there's some really good benefits for going down this particular road too. So let's have a look at one of the basic areas, really just simply automating manual tasks. Now, I mentioned here that these are the things that Rev-Trac does out of the box with no need to significantly customize and to be able to configure to do all these kinds of things. So very, very quickly you can begin to eliminate a whole range of manual tasks and speed up change delivery straight away. So things like automating workflow, getting that manual email stuff off the desk, which is inefficient, time consuming, and more often than not just sits in a big pile and doesn't turn up anywhere. Automatically deploying transports. The days really when you have skilled basis people or semi-skilled basis people sitting down manually entering in transport details to be able to move a change from dev to QA, and then when the business wants it from QA to production, they need to go, because the business needs to be able to approve something to production and then rest back knowing full well that this is going to go to production. Things like safety checking can be automated. This removes a huge amount of time. I'm sure you're all familiar with the days when you're sitting down with the spreadsheet with your 150 to sometimes 1,000 transport lists on there, and trying to make sure they're all in the right order, and then pressing the button and hoping all things go well. Well, within Rev-Trac, there are safety checks that are automated that can ensure that if you actually do make a mistake on the way, that Rev-Trac is going to alert you that things are out of sequence and you can fix it. Many companies run an N+1 project landscape. Of course, the retrofitting of BAU into that landscape can be a significant effort. We had one customer who told us that they would be spending up to 600 developer days per release doing the retrofits. With Rev-Trac automation, if you get your processes right, you should be able to eliminate around 98% of those. You only need to then manually work with those that are actually where there's a conflict. And you can also enforce your processes. When we're working with offshore people, new people on site, understanding what the process is and making sure things are followed can be very, very difficult. So this is important as well. Achieving technical visibility, this is another very important aspect of automation. So things like being able to understand what parallel development is taking place, being able to provide development managers and development leaders with the information they need to make decisions about parallel development, whether to allow it to go through, whether to combine it with another development and have them move through together. These are the types of things really that automation can provide to actually then begin to overcome some of those issues of managing parallel development. Of course, dependency management is difficult if one doesn't have the visibility. The business does not have visibility, so for them to understand that can be difficult. So we need to have dependency management between things like requests, transports, objects, and so on. And we need to manage the sequence of those as well to ensure that they can actually be moved through to production in the rate that's required and safely, to ensure that things don't get broken along the way as well. So automated technical visibility, that provides, it reduces the need for those manual checks. It speeds up the application lifecycle, and perhaps importantly, it enables the business to deploy the changes quite safely as well. So finally then, let's, not quite finally, second to finally, automated sprint and release management. With the right tools like Rev-Trac, you can manage by projects. We find that development teams still need to work across a range of methodologies. We don't believe that we will come across an SAP IT team that is 100% agile. There'll be a mixture of development methodologies. So there'll still be some stuff managed by project. There'll still be emergencies moving through. But managing by sprint, we have one customer that actually has really achieved a continuous delivery. They deliver changes into their SAP production system every 15 minutes. So it certainly is possible to be able to achieve the type of things that the business is hoping their IT teams can deliver for them. So whether you're managing by release or by sprint, you can work the way that you need to, and different teams can work the way that they need to as well. Then finally, of course, is to speed the whole thing up together, is talking about integrating, which was a little about that slide earlier from Gartner, where very few companies have automated their processes and provided integration, is to begin to integrate and then automate the technical orchestration of things as well. Across the application lifecycle, there are a number of automation tools available now to do all kinds of things. So we can do automated code reviews to ensure that the development is not putting into the production system vulnerabilities. We can do automated impact assessments. And of course, automated testing is something that is bubbling to the top now, because that seems to be the one thing that slows change delivery down the most. So if one can automate the testing, then that can go through. So with Rev-Trac as an automation platform, we can actually begin to include all of those into the end-to-end process. We often hear a lot about DevOps tool chaining and the DevOps tool chain and so on, but generally speaking, they're not a chain of tool. because there's nothing that's linking them together. With Rev-Trac, we can link all these things together so they can become a part of the end-to-end process. So, for example, with our integration with the Tosca test suite, Rev-Trac can submit the developed changes to the Tosca test suite. It will then receive back the testing report. If Rev-Trac sees that that report comes back with a positive result, it will then automatically approve that through to QA or approve that through to production, and then allow that to be deployed when the business wants to. If there is an issue, it will then automatically revert that particular change request back to in development, notify the developer or the development team that some work needs to be done. They'll check the results themselves, and then they'll make the changes they need to fix it up and then move it through, and the process begins again. So taking out of the hands of people manual tasks is really what it's all about, to actually make sure that we're able to accelerate the type of transformation that your businesses are actually looking to achieve. So in summary then, just before we get to a Q&A, so remember there is a section down the right-hand corner there to ask questions. So go ahead and begin to pop in there any questions that you might have. If I don't get to them now, we'll certainly get back to you by email. But in summary, we're realizing that the elimination of manual tasks will automatically speed up change delivery. You don't need to do a whole lot to actually get a very significant improvement up front. Technical visibility, well, that's going to reduce the need for manual checks. That will automatically speed up the life cycle as well. The automated safety checks, that will enable the business to deploy quite safely. So as we hand things over to the business to deploy at will, they can know that they're not going to get into trouble by moving things out of sequence, because they'll be told how to go about and do that as well. So, and of course, flexibility for teams. What we don't want is to introduce a tool set or a methodology that forces teams to work in different ways, to work in ways they don't want to. So one can utilize something like Rev-Trac when it's implemented to actually change the way things work, or you can actually use it to mirror the way things are being done today and then begin to gradually change them as we move along and become more mature in our processes. But you get that type of flexibility, so you don't all need to work the one way. You can have different teams work in different ways as well. So anyway, over to you. So if you have some questions, let's ask those now and see, and I can answer those for you. So I don't actually see any questions in the question section yet, so I'll just wait a few minutes and see if someone would like to ask a question, and then if so, I'll answer that. Otherwise, we'll just move on and close out the session today. So while they're coming in, a question that we get quite often. Well, I actually do have a question. Does Rev-Trac work with S/4HANA 1805? Rev-Trac does work with S/4HANA. S/4HANA, either the ABAP objects or the native HANA objects, they're all packaged up into CTS transports, CTS plus transports, and Rev-Trac integrates and works with those quite effectively. So to date, we have a number of customers running both on the HANA database and on S/4HANA, and they don't have any issues managing those changes with Rev-Trac at all. It does, of course, depend on exactly where your S/4HANA application is residing. We don't have too many sitting in the public cloud just yet, but in fact, we don't know any that are there at the moment, but it certainly works with that too. So no problem. That was a good question. Another question we often get is, look, how long does it actually take to get Rev-Trac implemented and up and running? Rev-Trac can be in your systems and providing significant value within 5 days. Within about 2 weeks, you can be having Rev-Trac managing 2 or 3 of your standardized processes. If you have a very large environment with lots of different processes and teams to work with, you might take another 3 or 4 months or so of someone's part-time effort or one of our consultants on site to help you configure and put all those processes in place. So usually we find customers within 3 months would be fully productive on Rev-Trac. Very large customers, it tends to take a little closer to 6 months, but along the way though, there'll be many teams coming online using Rev-Trac all the way there. And so you can be fairly well assured of what you're going to be delivered and when it's going to be delivered, and work with that quite effectively as well. So not too many other questions, but look, thank you for spending the time with us today. I do appreciate it. And sorry, there is another question from Jeff. Can I speak more to the abandoned work and how Rev-Trac can assist with this? So Rev-Trac Platinum is delivered with, there are two ways you can do that. So Rev-Trac Platinum is delivered with another one of our software tools called Rev-Trac Insights. Rev-Trac Insights creates an external repository or database of all of your custom code across all of your systems, and has a record of every version and every place and how long it's been there. So you can run a simple report against that to identify any work that's been sitting either in development system or in your QA system for, let's say, 6 months, and you can have a complete list of that work and try and understand if that is where you want it or not. Then you can have a cleanup project around that. Alternatively, you can simply do a Rev-Trac report on transports, and you can see all the transports that are sitting in QA that haven't been moved to production, and you can certainly get a feel for how long they've been sitting there as well. So hopefully that helps understand how that works. It's actually very handy, that particular aspect of Rev-Trac, if we're going to do a QA refresh. Often doing a QA refresh, the most difficult part is actually reapplying the work in progress transports and actually understanding where they were and how many there were and whether you still want them. There's a simple process in Rev-Trac that can reduce that significant effort into a very simple process as well. So, okay, well, look, thank you very much for your time. As I mentioned, I'm going to wrap this now as well. So hopefully by spending the time with us this morning, you have understood why going Agile can be important to achieving your CIO and senior IT's accelerated transformation objectives. We've spoken a little about what prevents SAP IT teams from going fully Agile and what some of the challenges are in and around all of that. And hopefully being able to lay a little foundation to help you understand how an underlying automation platform can make a significant impact to helping you achieve your Agile objectives as well. And then, of course, how Rev-Trac Platinum can accelerate your transformation. If you would like to see Rev-Trac in action, we can certainly provide you a very quick overview demo, which wouldn't take more than 30 or 40 minutes or so. And of course, if you like what you see, we can then come by and give you a much more in-depth one as well. So you will receive the slide deck, by the way, and there will be a recording of this session available as well. And you'll be emailed that post webinar as well. So there is a series of questions that will come up when you exit. Certainly would appreciate it if you would take some time to complete those. That just helps us improve what we do. If you don't have time, no problem at all. But from me, that's all for today. So thanks once again for your time. I do appreciate it, and we shall see you again soon. So bye for now.